That's a cool one.
So I had learned a run called an opposite over. And I thought, boy, this is a perfect time to use it. He was coming below me, I was above him. You roll the airplane on its back, and when he comes underneath you, you'll pull behind him and start blasting away. By the time I got around, he was halfway to Cairo. And that was my one air-to-air combat experience. So now, Rudy, by the way, Rudy Augerton was the other pilot, and he shot down this Egyptian Spitfire. He's on the cover of I Am My Brother's Keeper. That's his picture on the cover. And so I landed. I didn't think I had enough fuel. We didn't have gasoline gauges on this airplane, and the only indication of fuel remainder was a light that would come on that said you had approximately 15 minutes of fuel remaining in the airplane. So I didn't think I had enough fuel to safely land at our field in Herzliya, in Kfar Shmariyahu. So I knew we had this big airfield at Akir, which is now Hatzor, which is where the 101 Squadron is based, by the way. So I decided to land there. And I had never landed on a hard surface with an ME-109. It was made to land on grass fields. The landing gear was like a pigeon-toed person. It was towed, it was slanted in and towed in, so it would stop very quickly on a grass field. It was a very hot airplane. You had to come in at very high speed because it didn't have flaps. And so anyhow, I landed there, made a good landing, taxied in. A guy met me, taxied me into a revetment, fueled the airplane up, and I went to get in the airplane, and I noticed the oil leaking out from under the cowling. So I called this Israeli mechanic over, and I pointed it out to him. Excuse me. And he took off a piece of the cowling with a screwdriver, and he got under there and made a few twists, and he said, "Fixed." Well, anyhow, I took off, and I didn't see it, but they said there was a big black cloud underneath the airplane as I lost all the oil on takeoff. Now I was heading north towards our field, and I looked down at the oil pressure gauge, and it read 0. And the first time in all my flying experience I ever saw an oil pressure gauge read 0. So I began rapping on it, which is the first thing to do. Maybe there's something wrong. And then the engine started running rough, and smoke started coming back into the cockpit. I can still smell it to this day. So I said, "Leon, you better look around for a place to put down." You couldn't jump out. There was no way to get out of the airplane. No way. You were just locked in. So I spotted what is now Ben Gurion Airport. It was...
Lod Field?
Well, it was before Lod. It was Lida.
Lida.
And I headed for the east-west runway, but never made it. I saw an orange grove in front of me, and there was a separation between orange groves, and I just made it over a wadi full of boulders. I mean, huge boulders. The tail hit about 5 feet at the end of the wadi, and I slid on my belly, and the airplane went up on its nose, back down to the ground, and there I was. The left rudder pedal came back with a violent jolt, and to this day I swear I have one leg shorter than the other because of that incident. And I remember the day. It was October 16th, 1948. And so there I was in the middle of nowhere. I didn't know where I was. So I crawled out of the airplane, took off my parachute, folded it up neatly, put it on the wing of the airplane, and I started hiking west and north, away from the Jordanian lines. And I came to a road which was heading north, a dirt road, and I was very warm at this time. I had taken off wearing a sweater, and now that it was getting very warm, the sun was up. I took off my sweater and wrapped it around my waist, started hiking up the road, and off in the distance I saw a truck coming down the road heading in my direction. And in the interim, I had walked through a town with all kinds of Hebrew signs in it, which of course I can't read Hebrew. I find out later I had walked through what was a minefield, which I didn't know. It had been a scene of a battle, a previous battle, just maybe a week or two before. And I jumped into the ditch, and I had a .38, and I didn't know what I was going to do, if it was Jordanians or Arabs. Take 5 of them and save the last bullet for me, because I wasn't going to be taken prisoner, because I knew what would happen to foreign pilots. We had 2 of them that were mutilated and murdered beyond belief. And we knew about it. I mean, one of them was a very dear friend of mine. And so I jumped into the ditch, out of the road, pulled out my .38, and off in the distance, about 100 yards, I could hear Hebrew being spoke in the back of the truck. So I jumped out and started waving my arms, and the truck came to a screeching stop. They had seen the airplane come down and were going out to find out, what was taking place. I told them who I was, Americana Tayas, the little Hebrew I could speak. Get me to some place where there's a telephone. So I was not too far from Petah Tikva. So they drove me to Petah Tikva, to the police station there, and the chief of police was David Ben-Gurion's son, Amos Ben-Gurion. And they took me into the police station, and I went up to his apartment there, and I met his wife and his 2 little kids. And in the meantime, they had phoned up the field, and they were sending a Jeep to pick me up. So I spent most of the morning there and didn't arrive back at 101 until late in the afternoon. And the first thing that greeted me was a burning airplane on the field. Muddy Alon, our CO, had taken off with Azer on a fighter mission, and on the way back he couldn't get his landing gear down. So in the effort to get his landing gear down, he shook the airplane violently and went into a stall and crashed. And his wife, Mina, was standing out there waiting for him, and she was like 9 months pregnant. And of course I didn't know who was, the pilot was still in the airplane and was burning out there when I arrived on the scene. To find out later on that it was our CO, Mori Alan. So the next day, they had a funeral in this military cemetery, and I went to the funeral, of course, all of us did. And on the way leaving the funeral, I went into shock, and they put me in a hospital, and I stayed there for a couple of weeks while they nursed me back to health. And then I put in, by that time the Egyptians were pretty well beaten, and so I put in to go home.
And when you got home, you had a little discussion with whoever it was.
Oh, yeah, in New York.
In New York.
Yeah, well, at first they were sending people who were being repatriated through Montreal. They said, instead of going to Montreal and taking the train to New York and going through all this mishmash, why don't we try somebody, see if he can go through New York? So I was the guinea pig. So I get to New York, and here I am, disheveled and dirty. I've been flying from Geneva for 20-some hours or longer, black, from the desert sun. And I'm going through customs, and I notice that everybody's leaving except me. And all of a sudden, the door locks on both sides of this room, and they started taking my bag apart and asking me all kinds of questions. There's pictures of me and Ben-Gurion, and no Israeli stamp in my passport, as you know, and all kinds of stuff. And they kept me there till about 5 o'clock in the morning, and this was from about midnight. And finally, I told one of the guys that was questioning me, I don't know who they were, from the Immigration and Naturalization Service or the FBI or what. I says, look, do me a favor, I'm tired, put me in jail, I need some sleep. He turned me loose. And as I told Steve this story, which is kind of cute, I had money. You know, I had a few $100s, which I had taken with me. And I needed a room very badly. I got into this taxi cab, and the only hotel that I knew of was the old Pennsylvania Hotel in New York. So I jump in the cab and I asked the driver to take me to the Pennsylvania Hotel. And he pulls up and I said, "Don't leave, just wait for me." So I go in the lobby and walk up to the clerk, and it's about 6 o'clock in the morning. And I said, "I would like a room." And the guy's writing something. He looks up at me and he says, "Buddy, the YMCA is right down the street." So I wasn't about to fight with him. I turned around and went to the cab and I said, "Can you find me a place?" He says, "Yeah, there's a little hotel right off of Times Square, you know. It's not the Ritz, but it's a clean bed and a shower." And I said, "Hey, I'll take it." So then of course I checked in with our people in New York, and they sent me home.
Wow, what a story. Thanks for sharing it. So, the time you went to Hibbing Junior College to take ground school and fly the paper club, to your staying at the hotel in New York one last night. What an adventure, huh?
Yes, yeah. And it hasn't stopped.
It is. Well, thanks for sharing it with us. I'm glad to capture it on tape, and we'll use some of it for my piece in the Star Tribune.
Yeah, whatever.
And the rest we'll save as cherished history of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.